Hey everyone, and welcome to the 5 Bytes podcast. And now a roundup of this week's enterprise IT news highlights. First up, Microsoft has warned of a vulnerability CVE 2026 41091. And this is a Microsoft Defender local privilege escalation vulnerability known as Red Sun. They also disclosed CVE 2026 45498, and this one is known as Undefend. This is a security flaw that could be exploited by standard users to block Microsoft Defender definition updates, according to a security researcher known as Nightmare Eclipse, who disclosed them last month. An awful lot of nicknames or branding applying there. Now, luckily, Microsoft started rolling out security patches for the two Defender vulnerabilities that have been exploited in zero-day attacks. So, obviously, you'll want to make sure that you're patched and kept up to date. Obviously, the possibility for a standard user to be able to prevent definition updates should be of major concern to every organization. And the US CISA has instructed government agencies to patch themselves. So that's a pretty good indication that everyone should be on the ball with these vulnerabilities and getting patched. The CISA also warned agencies to secure their servers against a SQL injection vulnerability in the Drupal content management system that is flagged as actively exploited. The security flaw can be exploited without authentication, allowing attackers to trigger arbitrary SQL injection on PostgreSQL-powered sites via specially crafted requests. Successful exploitation can potentially lead to information disclosure, privilege escalation, and even remote code execution. The Drupal security team set this flaw as highly critical before releasing patches and confirmed that exploitation attempts have been detected in the wild. Shadow Server has indicated that they're tracking nearly 670 unpatched Drupal installations exposed online, most of them in North America and Europe. Recently, bleepycomputer.com shared that Microsoft is sharing migrations for YellowKey, which was a recently disclosed Windows BitLocker zero-day vulnerability that I covered on last week's episode of the podcast. Microsoft said that it's now tracking the YellowKey vulnerability under CVE 2026 45585 and shared mitigation measures to defend against potential attacks exploiting it in the wild. In the security advisory, Microsoft stated the proof of concept for this vulnerability has been made public, violating coordinated vulnerability best practices. Yeah, and I shared last week that the individual was upset with Microsoft, and that is why this individual decided to publish the exploit. On their part, Microsoft said, quote, "We are issuing this CVE to provide mitigation guidance that can be implemented to protect against this vulnerability until the security update is made available," end quote. To mitigate YellowKey attacks, Microsoft recommended removing the autofstx.exe entry from the session manager's boot execute string registry value, and then reestablishing BitLocker Trust for WinRE by following a procedure that they detailed under the mitigations within the posted security advisory. They explained that you prevent the FSTX auto recovery utility from automatically starting when the WinRE image launches. And with this change, the transactional NTFS replaying that deletes WinPESHL.ini no longer happens, which is part of the exploit path. Microsoft also advised customers to configure BitLocker on already encrypted devices from TPM only mode to TPM plus PIN mode via PowerShell. Or you could use a command line or the control panel, which would require a pre-boot PIN to decrypt the drive at startup and should block YellowKey attacks. Might not be ideal for some organizations, though. On devices that are not yet encrypted, administrators can enable the require additional authentication at startup option via Intune or group policies, while ensuring the configure TPM startup pin is set to require startup pin with TPM. Microsoft has also confirmed a new known issue affecting Windows Server 2016 systems that caused domain controller lookups to fail after installing KB5087537, which was a May 2026 security update. Windows Server 2016 obviously reached the end of mainstream support in January of 2022, but Microsoft has pushed back the extended support end date by 5 years to allow customers to migrate to newer server versions. As Microsoft explained in an updated support document, this affects only devices with host names exactly 15 characters long, which is a bit odd and specific. But Microsoft said that after installing the update, domain controller discovery might fail on Server 2016 systems when the server host name is 15 characters long, with DC locator calls returning an error underscore invalid underscore parameter error, preventing applications and admin tools from locating a domain controller. Microsoft also noted that this known issue may also affect certain administrative scenarios that require access to a domain controller, according to bleepycomputer.com. So this could also be affecting things like DFS, namespace management, and more. And Microsoft are currently investigating this issue. Ubiquiti has released security updates to patch 3 maximum severity vulnerabilities in UniFi OS that could be exploited by remote attackers without privileges. UniFi OS is the operating system that powers UniFi consoles and helps manage infrastructure, including network security and other services, for a series of UniFi applications too. The first flaw, CVE-2026-34908, enables attackers to make unauthorized changes to targeted systems by exploiting an improper access control weakness in UniFi OS, while the second, CVE-2026-34909, allows them to access files on the underlying system by abusing a path traversal vulnerability, which could be manipulated to access an underlying account. There's also a third maximum severity vulnerability, CVE-2026-34910, that makes it possible for malicious actors to launch a command injection attack after gaining network access by exploiting an improper input validation vulnerability. And last Thursday, the company patched another critical command injection flaw, CVE-2026-33000, and a high severity information disclosure vulnerability, CVE-2026-34911, and both also affected UniFi OS devices. The company has yet to disclose whether any of these 5 vulnerabilities were exploited in the wild before disclosure, but shared that they could be exploited in low complexity attacks and were reported through its HackerOne bug bounty program, according to bleepycomputer.com. At the time of scripting this episode, which was last week, there was reportedly 100,000 internet exposed UniFi OS endpoints, and most of them were found in the US. Obviously, this is very low hanging fruit because UniFi OS runs on their series of network devices. So those are going to be widely exposed on the internet. If you haven't already, like if you have a home network setup that's running UniFi OS, you probably should enable auto updates since it is something that's quite sensitive. So definitely worth considering. In another security-related story from bleepycomputer.com, they reported that Google accidentally leaked details about an unfixed issue in Chromium that keeps JavaScript running in the background even when the browser is closed, allowing remote code execution on a device. The flaw was originally reported by security researcher Lyra Rebane and acknowledged as valid in December 2022, as per a thread on Chromium Issue Tracker. An attacker could exploit the problem to create a malicious web page with a service worker, such as a download task that never terminates. Rebane says that this could allow an attacker to execute JavaScript code on a visitor's devices. On October 26, 2024, so almost 2 years later, a Google developer noticed that the issue was still open and described it as a serious vulnerability that needed a status update to ensure that there is progress. This year, on February 10th, the issue was marked as fixed and reopened just a few minutes later due to several concerns. Since it was a security problem, the labels for the bug were updated so it could go through the Chrome Vulnerability Rewards Program panel, and the issue was marked as fixed on February 12th, although a patch had not been shipped. An automated email informed Rebane that she had been awarded a bug bounty of $1,000. All access restrictions on Chromium Issue Tracker were removed on May 20th, since the bug had been closed for more than 14 weeks and marked as fixed in the system. On the same day, Rebane tested the fix and noticed that the problem was still present on Chrome Dev 150 and Edge 148. The researcher said, quote, "Back in 2022, I found a bug that would let me, with no user interaction, turn any Chromium-based browser into a permanent JavaScript botnet member. In Edge, you wouldn't even notice anything out of place and would stay connected to the C2 even after closing the browser." End quote. After noticing that the exploit still worked, the researcher realized that Google had likely published the details by mistake. And to make matters worse, the download pop-up that appeared when triggering the exploit previously no longer comes up in the latest Edge, making the exploit even stealthier. Rebane posted on Mastodon in all capitals, "Oh no, I just realized this is not actually properly fixed and still works." So unfortunately, it looks like Google has slipped up and they've made it public that there's this vulnerability that they said was fixed, but it has not been fixed. Unfortunately, at the time of this recording, Google has yet to comment. The FBI has warned that the silent ransomware group extortion gang is now targeting US-based law firms in-person data theft attacks, saying that as of spring, SRG actors use a social engineering scheme to pose as an employee from the victim's IT department. SRG actors either directly call or send phishing emails to urge employees to call the SRG actor who is posing as IT support. While on the phone, the SRG actor directs the employee to grant access to a remote desktop session. If that attempt fails, SRG sends a threat actor to the victim's location to gain access to insert a storage device into the victim's computer. By going to the victim's location in person, the malicious actors can steal data by connecting USB drives or external hard drives to the victim's computer. The FBI included the unauthorized installation of external hard drives or USB devices on company computers and the presence of unidentified or unauthorized individuals claiming to be IT support and attempting to access computers as possible indicators of an SRG attack. SRG reportedly uses the stolen data to extort the victims by sending a ransom email that threatens to sell or post it on their leak site, and will also call the victims' employees or clients to pressure them into beginning ransom negotiations. I'm guessing law firms, a lot of them will be small enough that they don't really have a fully properly managed IT. So perhaps things like USB drives are allowed to connect like willy-nilly to devices. And this is why this type of attack vector could work. NeoWin.net has reported on the latest Insider Windows 11 preview and has reported that the update accelerates app launch and core shell experiences, such as with Start Menu, Search, and Action Center, which is a pretty nice little enhancement, just general performance improvements. But also they reported that shared audio is a new feature that enables two people to listen to the same audio from a single Windows 11 PC at the same time. It uses Bluetooth LE audio broadcast technology to make sharing easy. So for example, you can watch a movie while traveling or listen to music while studying together. And to start sharing audio, just open a quick settings from the taskbar, select shared audio, choose two supported, paired, and connected devices, and then select start sharing. There are also some enhancements to Task Manager, with Task Manager now offering improved visibility into NPU usage on PCs with an NPU. The update also improves CPU speed display on the performance page of Task Manager or VMs, so it doesn't show higher than expected numbers after resuming from hibernation. Also new, though, is Windows 11's multi-app camera feature, which allows multiple applications to access your camera stream at the same time. Basic camera mode in Windows 11 enables simplified camera functionality, useful for troubleshooting or improving stability when your camera is not working correctly. Enterprise admins can now set multi-app camera mode or basic camera mode through group policy. So that's actually a cool one for me because it's happened to be twice where I'm presenting a webinar and some application, probably Teams, was holding on to my web camera. So my web camera wouldn't work in GoToMeeting, for example. So it'd be nice to have that ability where it's not holding on to the camera just within one application. Interestingly, in the preview, you can also now choose a custom name for your user folder on the device name page during the Windows setup. So that's kind of cool, I guess, right? Because you might want to have your name, your full name for the display name, but maybe you want like a different name for the actual user profile location. So that's kind of interesting. I wonder if that will upset or confuse some IT processes. Hopefully, anyone who's keying off of those locations are using the environment variables, but hopefully no one's trying to just, discern user profiles based off of the actual username. I'm guessing since it's done through setup, it's probably something you could not allow within autopilot when it comes to it. In a quick hit story reported by neowin.net, Mozilla has released Firefox 151, which appears to be a big bug fixing update. This update addresses bugs on certain Intel processors, and Mozilla is delivering 10 more fixes to resolve issues with split view, unexpectedly closing tabs, crashes on Windows with certain input methods, and more under the hood improvements. Ars Technica reported that Nvidia has said that the old control panel application will no longer be installed by default, since all actively supported Nvidia control panel features for GeForce users have been modernized and transitioned to the new Nvidia app. They said that the Nvidia app contains all of the modern functionality of the Nvidia control panel available for GeForce RTX GPUs and much more, while running faster and more efficiently. The Nvidia app also offers more advanced features than the control panel app had, including driver updates and DLSS overrides for using newer upscaling models with games that only natively support older DLSS versions. At least for now, the control panel will continue to be installed for users of RTX Pro, RTX, and Quadro GPUs using NVIDIA's workstation drivers, since NVIDIA hasn't migrated all of the relevant professional features from the control panel to the NVIDIA app yet. Finally, in the news for this week, the BBC reported that the boss of Standard Chartered has apologized after describing employees whose jobs are vulnerable to being replaced by AI as lower value human capital. Discussing how automation was likely to lead to thousands of job cuts at the bank at a recent conference, Bill Winters said it wasn't about cost cutting, but replacing, in some cases, lower value human capital with the financial capital and the investment capital that they're putting in. He later sought to contextualize the remarks via LinkedIn and said he was sorry for his wording, which had caused upset to some colleagues. He said he was committed to helping staff cope with the accelerating pace of change. The rise of AI tools obviously has led to predictions of huge job losses, particularly for tech workers and graduates, but also threatening others, such as in finance too. A lot of the senior bankers have made some pretty, I don't know, tone deaf and blunt comments in the past about work from home and for other aspects too. So it's not that surprising that someone who's leading a finance company, such as a bank, would speak so bluntly like this. But now, this episode scripts, tricks, and tips. First up, bleepycomputer.com had an article on how you can enforce strong Active Directory password rules without frustrating your users. On the site, within the stories, it didn't look like a sponsored post, but it looks like the author comes from a sponsored post, so kind of beware on that. It's going to have a bit of a bias angle, but there's some useful information in it nonetheless. Also, I saw an interesting study from last month. Actually, it was published last month at the time of this recording, from ahrefs.com on why ChatGPT cites pages. And what I thought was interesting was it shows that 67.8% of non-cited URLs in the ChatGPT results are from Reddit, which I think is really interesting because a couple of years ago, OpenAI and Reddit came to an agreement. And you might remember just over 2 years ago, I believe, Reddit got in a bit of hot water with its users because they were charging for usage of the Reddit API. Thus, I think, is what kind of forced this agreement with OpenAI and Reddit. But what's interesting is it's like less than 2% of the results from ChatGPT cites Reddit as a source. However, 67.8% of non-cited URLs are from Reddit. And the thing I think is really interesting about this is, when ChatGPT originally came out, the big flaw was that it was working off a data set that was already old. So it needed to be able to become more current. So what does it have to do? It has to be able to query real-time sources. And one of those real-time sources is ChatGPT. And then ChatGPT also benefits from Reddit because they're able to see what actual humans are posting on a forum about stories. So it's able to contextualize its data sets from authoritative sources with that kind of human, non-paid voice. So personally, what I think is going to happen, and I think is already happening if you look at a lot of the tech subreddits, I think companies who want to promote themselves and get themselves up in the ChatGPT results and other and results within other Gen AI models is going to have to post on these forums to try and influence those models. And it's a bit risky when, say, for example, you're able to influence via something like Reddit when that's not being cited within the results. So you could have it say something really great about your company and product by kind of flooding Reddit, and it won't show why it's coming to that conclusion because it's not citing the source. But anyway, I could have covered that as news, but I knew I was going to add my own little 2 cents into that one. So I figured I'd save it as a tip if you want to check out the research for yourself. I'll share a link with this episode. But that's it. Thank you so much for listening.